Yeah, I can start because basically we're just going to talk about how this school year has gone for us, because we have been on one mission kind of the entire school year, which has been our climate action plan for the school system. So basically, like you can see in this blurb here, the Howard County public school system is a large part of kind of our impact on the environment government-wise, because there are so many government facilities and operations going on that directly impact the environment. So we wanted to, and we saw that the Prince George's County public school system had come out with a climate action plan. So we want to come up with one. So we were like, why can't Howard County do the same? Which is basically the premise for our entire project that we've been working on, and that is still in progress right now. And so just going through the first few slides, I guess, Emily, if you want to talk about who Sunrise is as an organization and what we kind of do.
Someone needs to be, yes, please, give us a back.
Sunrise is a national youth climate justice organization, and we are the Howard County hub of the Sunrise movement. So like Lindsey said, this year we've been focusing on the climate action plan, and it's been led by Lindsey, myself, and another student, Oliver Song. We're all seniors from HCPSS. And we've also been working with central office staff, Dr. Hall and Ms. Reese, who are the heads of the science department within the school system.
Yeah, so I can try to present if you want. My computer's a little slow, but I should be able to. I have it pulled up already.
Okay, yeah, I'll
You have to give me the permissions though. Oh, actually, I think I might have it already.
okay, there you go.
Right? Oh,
I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your slides.
okay. Let me try now. Screen. I'm on the Zoom page right now, but here's the next. Can you all see everything?
It says you've started screen sharing, but I don't see anything.
Yes.
Chad, I also just oh, there we
There
go.
we go. There we go. We got it.
Okay, cool. So we kind of went through the first two slides already, and okay, yeah. So I guess the first few slides. Here's me, Emily, and Oliver, and then like Emily mentioned, to Dr. Reese and Miss Hall. Dr. Hall and Miss Reese, I mixed that up, but all right. So then basically our original mission and vision were to combat the climate crisis by targeting specific areas of the school system for improvement. So our vision was to develop a plan that the school system could follow in order to reduce some of their negative impacts on the environment. All right. And then Emily, if you want to go over this slide.
Lindsey mentioned the Prince George's County plan earlier. Like she said, that's where we got the idea from. They implemented their own climate action plan for their school system, and it was very elaborate the way they did it. They had a whole work group for everything, and we wanted to create a work group for our process as well, which we did with the research, which we'll get into later. And there was also a climate action plan for the county government. They kind of helped us launch our project off, and we used some of the same focus points that they used in their plan, which we'll also get into later.
So then why specifically we wanted to do an action plan was because we wanted to connect the initiatives going on, because there's initiatives around electric buses and waste, particularly recycling and food waste. And we wanted to kind of incorporate all of those things into the infrastructure and the systems already in place. So then our initial timeline was to create the work group that would do all the research to figure out exactly what should go in the plan by February, which I think we were about on time for. And then I think the work group started like late March. And then we finished our research collection in late May, early June. And then now our next few steps are to finalize the action plan and start implementing the plan.
There are 4 phases of our plan. We just finished the research phase, which had 5 focus points: energy, transportation, land management, waste, and education. I think I said all 5. And we had 5 committees researching each of those. That lasted about 2 to 3 months. And now we're ready to move on to the drafting phase. And after that, we'll be revising the plan to finalize everything, and then the approval process where we have to bring it to the board and get their approval for everything.
So like Emily said, the 5 areas of research were energy, transportation, waste, land management, and education. So basically under each of all of those, we were tackling, like with energy, we're looking at the sources of energy that the school system pulls from. Like if you know that the first, I think, net zero school in Maryland was Wild Lake Middle School, which they did like a bunch of retrofits on, like I think around 2018, a few years ago. And so the school has solar panels in the front and a lot of different cool renewable energy facets about it. But obviously all the other schools are not like that. So looking at how we could get more renewable energy involved. And then secondly, transportation, we were looking at buses, but also important things like idling and different county vehicles, not just the buses. And then also looked at waste, so recycling, trash, and also food waste. And then land management was looking at how we can use the land of the schools for different like greener purposes. And then education was looking at curriculum and how we can incorporate more climate education. So then part 1 of the research was kind of looking at what's the current situation. And they had a bunch of questions in the document that we gave them that they needed to answer. And then part 2 was focusing on what changes can be made. So based on what's already happening now, what needs to be improved or what needs to be removed or whatever the situation is. And so those were also questions on the document. And so yeah. So that's the end of our presentation. And if you had any questions, definitely.
Yes. It's time for the Q&A. Remember what I said, it has to be a question. And in 1 minute, does anyone have a question for Lindsey and Emily?
I have one if no one else is going to go. So you mentioned you were looking at ways to reduce idling. Could you talk about what strategies you were thinking?
We haven't really discussed the specific strategies for everything. I think that's going to be more of what we do in the drafting process. We had our transportation committee. I know they've mentioned it to us. Our student chair has talked to us about how he sees buses idling for a long time. So that's definitely going to be something that we address, but we don't yet have the specific strategies for it.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Sure.
Car idling, are you all looking at that about car rider and pickup lines?
I think we definitely can. I think a lot of it is also going to have to be more user-based, like people who are interacting with the school system, because it's harder to get the budget to adjust to different school system items. And I think also education surrounding like idling and also food waste, I think particularly, and waste in general will be big points to kind of include, whether not being directly in the curriculum, but like having materials and such. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of room for consideration in a lot of things. So
Thanks.
Like Yvonne has her hand up.
Here we go. Yes. So I wanted to know where the money for the solar panels came from at that one school. And then I have a follow-up.
I'm not sure. Well, I think just in the money that they were using for the renovations to the school, they kind of made a bold decision to go completely like net zero and make it the first net zero school in Maryland. So I think it was easier for them to find funds because it was just kind of like a decision they made that was kind of like a precedent, but that precedent didn't increase the amount of schools this was happening to. It just kind of, they were like, that was a really big upfront cost that we don't want to do again. So. And then what's your follow-up question?
So if you had it in your plan to put solar panels in some of the other schools, I'm wondering where the money might come from. I mean, since this was already in there because the school was being renovated.
That's one issue.
It's always
that-
about money.
Yeah, we've actually talked a lot about this with the HCPSS energy manager. And we've come into, I think our biggest budgeting problem has been with energy and solar panels. We're not sure that solar panels will be the direct path we're going to take. It might look more like looking into the energy provider or some separate solar project. They are coming up with an energy resolution that we're going to put into the plan to address that. So it's still, we're still not quite certain how it will play out, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Anyone else with a hand up? I'm looking. No, it looks like we're all good.
I see Sarah has
Oh,
her hand. just now
Sarah,
with the
okay,
hand raised.
yes.
So
Thank you.
Worthington Elementary, they don't use the solar energy off of the solar panels right next to the elementary school. Is that what I'm getting?
They use those panels for the school, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think they use it for any other schools. They might use it for Wildwood High School too, because they're right next to each other, but I'm not sure exactly which schools it goes to, but I'm pretty sure it goes to the middle school at the very least.
Oh, so it goes to Ellicott Mills.
No, Wild Lake.
Were the solar panels right next to Worthington Elementary?
Oh, I don't know about those.
Okay, there's a former dump and like right next to Worthington Elementary. That's like stacked with solar panels on top of it. We may want to find out like if the solar panels are like going to Worthington.
Yeah, I didn't know there were any other solar panels in the school system. I don't know.
It was because like I mean Worthington Elementary was pretty much built next to a dump. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I did not know that.
Okay, I see Paul's hand is up.
Yeah, quick comment and an associated question. I was on one of those 5 committees, as Lindsay and Emily may remember. I was on the landscape committee, and I noticed 2 other people on this call, Bob Marietta and Ruth Alice White, who are on some committee, one or more of the 5 committees. My comment is, I found it very interesting that it was a 3-part campaign or a 3-part project. with 3 different categories. Engaged, active students, mostly Sunrise oriented. Administrative bureaucrat types who want to do good, and that's fine. And adult environmentalists like yours truly, Bob and Ruth Alice. And I found that combination particularly creative and a good model. I'm just wondering how you assess, Lindsey and Emily, that working out in terms of those 3 parts, and whether that's something that could be replicated.
We definitely stole that idea from the PG County Action Plan. They have a really cool website detailing everything that they did. And so they took people from their school system, they took students, they took teachers, they took other administrators, and they took community members and parents and built the work groups. So that's kind of the idea we wanted to go off from the beginning, because we definitely wanted student voice involved, but we also wanted as broad a net cast as possible to kind of allow for different voices to be inserted and to hear the best opinions, and also including the administrators. It created a bit more of a challenge, I think, because they were less, they knew more, but they were less kind of, because they knew more, they kind of saw more of the difficulties, and it kind of created a kind of a harder way to be more ambitious with the project. But I think it definitely balanced out, because the students were kind of like the opposite kind of, why can't we do it? So even if they were saying, no, we can't do that, students were saying like, well, why not? And so it was kind of a really interesting dynamic, I think I saw a lot.
If I may add on that last point, we had a terrific member who was an add-on our subcommittee on land management, a guy by the name of Brandon Sands, no relation to you, Lindsey, I take it. But he's in charge of landscaping and stuff and around the schools and planting trees and bushes. And he was very responsive, probably because he came to Howard County Public School System from Parks and Recreation. And he was taking those skills and talents and bringing them to us. And we found them at the end of our time that we were doing stuff. So I think finding talent and creating networks was a really important lesson that we found out. So I just want to toss that in for everyone's consideration.
And we have a question from Ruth.
Yes, a key part of getting the PG County Climate Action Plan passed was a huge engagement of the larger public. At what phase will that happen? And do you think that anything really ambitious can be achieved without it?
That will most likely happen during the approval phase, because that's when we're going to need the public support, so the board can see that everybody wants our plan passed. We might publicize it more beforehand. It's been publicized a bit already with the research phase, because we had to let the community know that this was happening in order to recruit people. But we definitely will let the community know more about it, because we will need their support in order for it to be passed.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation. I think we're ready to move on to ways to get involved with our revolution. And I have a dog routine. Sorry, I'm gonna.
I saw Joan put one thing at the very end, one question. It looks like.
Yeah, sorry. But we have time for that. I wondered if Lindsey or is it Emily could make a more general comment about Sunrise and tell us about Sunrise and the scope of your concerns. For example, are you focusing mostly on greenhouse gas emissions, or is it more general, looking at a climate action plan in terms of things like extreme weather events and other threats associated with climate change.
I feel like the organization as a whole is very, well, because it started to back the Green New Deal as a student voice to back the Green New Deal, but now it shifted focus because that's less of the train we're on right now. And I know last year or the year before that, they were pushing for Green New Deals for municipalities, which is kind of also where we got this idea because they were doing that shift anyway. And we saw the PG County plan, it kind of came together, but they were kind of advocating for more local legislation in terms of comprehensive climate legislation, whether that be for school systems or local governments. So I think it does encompass a lot of things, not just greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it's also because also the organization is involved in non-climate related issues as well, because it recognizes the intersectionality of different social justice as well. So I think there's definitely room to advocate for issues that are tangentially related to greenhouse gases and emissions and just climate change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now I guess we'll go to the next slide.